Good evening, everyone. All right, awesome. What a great crowd. And welcome to tonight's celebration of Eugene McCarthy's 100th birthday. So, my name is Matt Lindstrom, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the McCarthy Center for Civic Engagement and Public Policy, and I teach in the Political Science Department. And I've never done one of these Centennial events before, and I don't think we'll do I'll be around for the next one. So we'll see how this goes, and it should be a fabulous program tonight with fabulous people. Let me just start off with a few words of gratitude and thanks. First of all, I want to thank the McCarthy family, and it's really quite an extended family that's here tonight. I've been meeting second cousins and nephews and uncles and so on and so forth. It's a great privilege to be friends with Ellen in particular, and Mary Beth is here, and Charlie and others. Stacy Pank, the coordinator of the McCarthy Center, is also here, done fabulous work. Edwin Torres, the key student worker, is really the lead on this project, but really the entire McCarthy Center team of student coordinators and volunteers. There's absolutely no way I can do this by myself. And you can see, looking around, it's really quite a fabulous spread. Yeah, exactly. Of course, none of the McCarthy Center wouldn't exist without the generous support of Dan and Catherine Whalen, who unfortunately are not able to be here tonight, but they've generously funded the center. Several other folks, librarians Kathy Parker and David Malone, put together a beautiful exhibit in the library. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at it, please do. It'll be up for a couple more weeks. Also want to thank the St. John's University archivist, Peggy Roski, who's here as well. She not only helped out with the exhibit, but she's helped out with the McCarthy Center for the last 10 years. It's really phenomenal. Speaking of helping out, St. John's Institutional Advancement Team, really, it's dangerous starting to name names, but Joanne Matheny is phenomenal. John Taylor, Rob Culligan, and many others are here as well. And again, I know, I'm sorry, I see there's people I didn't recognize with IA, but y'all are awesome. Congressman Tom Emmer, who was here earlier, we had an event at the post office. As many of you know, we're going to be naming that at the Eugene McCarthy Post Office here in Collegeville. So we're happy about that. Yeah. And if you're curious, this is the official House Resolution 4425, which names the post office after Senator McCarthy. Finally, I want to thank Jeff Wubbles and his team. They always do a phenomenal job. And all of our dinner speakers and entertainers. You all are in for a really, really enjoyable night. And thanks for getting clean for Gene, by the way, some of you. Really, for some of you, it's a bigger effort and all that, but it looks like we all came through. So tonight we remember the life and legacy of Eugene McCarthy, and really a classic and American story. A small-town boy of Irish and German heritage who rose to the top of the national stage. A man whose life was inspired by the Benedictine spirit, but also a well-rounded sense of the liberal arts and all that life offers. Senator McCarthy's values and courage to stand for your convictions continue to inspire civic engagement and public policy involvement for students and all of us today. It's truly a great honor to direct a center named after Eugene McCarthy, and as we celebrate Gene's 100th birthday today, we also mark the beginning of the McCarthy Center's 10th year. And time flies when you're having fun, and speaking of fun, we definitely have a very enjoyable evening tonight. We're going to be doing a series of short talks and reflections and some entertainment, a little film. So it's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of chatter, but we will have some time to talk amongst your guests as well. Before we continue, I'd like to call Abbot John Clausen to the front to offer us a blessing prior to the meal. Thank you.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for color and the beauty of spring, for the signs of life this year being slowly renewed, for the life that comes to us through the dying and rising of Jesus. Strengthen all those in our country who work each day to bridge political differences for the common good and the unity of this country. As we celebrate the centennial of Senator Eugene McCarthy's birthday, we ask you to bless his whole family and relationship, all those who have worked so diligently to plan these events with all good things. Bless this food, this time together, those who labored to prepare it, and those who serve it. Keep us always mindful of the needs of others, and we make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
All righty. So the staff will be serving dinner in a few minutes, but before they do that, I would like to call Carol Connolly to the stage. Carol, that'd be your cue. Awesome. And if you can help make room for the Poet Laureate of St. Paul, Minnesota, Carol Connolly. So as she's making her way up, as many of you know, Eugene McCarthy was obviously not just a politician, right? He was a poet, he was a writer, he was an amazing athlete, and like I said, truly reflects the liberal arts. And I'd like to start off by raising a glass to Senator McCarthy, to his centennial, and to all of you. Cheers. Cheers. All right. Carol Connolly with a few poems. McCarthy poems, of course. Maybe.
Of course.
Yes.
Are there any other kind of poems? I don't think so. I just have two short poems written by Gene, obviously, from his very book. There in the savage orange of autumn tamarack, rusted spikes reeling the slanted last of the northern day. Oh, it's wonderful when you're reading, aren't you? And you get a frog in your throat. Bear with me, I'll start again. There in the savage orange of autumn tamarack, rusted spikes reeling the slanted last of the northern day, down into the black root waters, among the least trees in that least land in the darkened death camp of the tribe of trees. I saw you, green, gold, willow, arched and graced, among spines and angled limbs, captive, queen, all lost light from the smothering swamp, alone you bear back. And this is one of my favorite poems of Eugene McCarthy's, maybe it's yours too, called Bicycle Rider, which he wrote for Mary. Teeth bare to the wind, knuckle-white grip on handlebars, you push the pedals of no return. Let loose new motion and speed. The earth turns with the multiplied force of your wheels. Do not look back. Feet light on the brake, ride the bicycle of your will down the spine of the world, ahead of your time, into life. I will not say, go slow. Thanks to Eugene McCarthy for a couple of fine poems. Thank you.
Wait, you have to, wait, I need your help. Can you stay here and help me then? Because I don't know how to do this so well. Okay, and this is all set up like this? Good evening, everybody. Somehow or another, just happy birthday, Gene. Doesn't quite do it for Uncle Gene. It's amazing that it is 100 years since he was born. My God, I realized that March 29th, 1916 was 1 month before the Easter Rising, that he came in sort of ready to greet the beginning of the independence movement. in Ireland. I was like Alice, sitting by the banks of probably Eagle Lake in Wilmer, Minnesota. I am Mary Beth McCarthy Yarrow, and I am the oldest of Austin McCarthy's 6 daughters, and Austin was Gene's youngest brother, the pitcher. It was March, it was 1968, and sitting there by the banks of that Eagle Lake shore, I was contemplating my life when the 1968 Gene McCarthy primary campaign thumped across my path, and I jumped down that rabbit hole. And like Alice, my life was changed forever. For it was a time in which my thinking of the world cracked open, my sense of a participation in it was birthed. It was during that campaign in Oregon where I met Peter Yarrow, my husband, my dear and beloved friend, and although no longer married, we live a life that is still until death do us part. And a year and a half after we met, we were married, and a year and a half later, our first child, Elizabeth Bethany Burt Yarrow, was born. And as Peter always said, she had the audacity to be born on Gene's birthday. I became a documentary filmmaker. I lived in New York, working there for 30 years. It was April, just about this time, 1986, Stuart Mott decided to have a 70th birthday party for Gene McCarthy, and why not have it at Road of Shalom? It was on the Upper West Side. It was a facility that would let us have the party. And I had the thought to find a camera crew and come and just start to film the event. There's a tiny little snippet that you will see in this piece tonight. It's actually Abby Hoffman paying tribute to somebody who worked within a system, honoring him in that way. In 1996, I had the idea to actively do a film document on Uncle Gene's life and legacy and contribution, and at that time he was still alive. In this piece tonight, you'll see him sort of wandering in the cold of New Hampshire. It was the 1996 Gore Clinton campaign, and Gene is there with Senator then Al Franken, who had just written Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Pig, I think was the book. He's there with Bill Maher when Bill Maher was doing Politically Incorrect before he just became Bill Maher. And then that footage was sort of put to bed. And we filmed again, and we went to Virginia to his house and filmed in 1997 for his 81st birthday when he came to Minneapolis. I hired a film videographer to follow him in 1992 when he alone was challenging the third party in the snows of New Hampshire. This has been a long journey for me, but I feel very grateful in the way that divine intervention has led me. For Gene died. Dan and Catherine Whalen made a contribution to St. John's to create the Eugene J. McCarthy Center for Public Policy and Civic Engagement. Matt Lindstrom has directed that program and has grown the center into something that I think really honors Gene's legacy. And I think that for him to see these young people who come from around the world, who are traveling out to places in the world, some of them may have come here, quite honestly, not knowing the difference between Senator Eugene Joseph McCarthy and Senator Joe McCarthy of Wisconsin. Edwin could probably talk for a minute to that. So as those of us who are still among us, on this side of the grass, as my father always used to say, who remember Gene McCarthy, we are becoming fewer and far between. And I feel very, very, very grateful that as in this time in my life, I am able to have the time and to take the time to now finally do a film on this man whom brought so much to my life. He is indeed, as was Abigail, he is my godfather and she my godmother. So there's a big circle here. What we're going to see tonight is a 10-minute fundraising promo reel. It will go by very quickly. But I am here with Bill Kersey, who is the director and the editor of the project, Slavomir Grunberg, who is the cameraman here tonight, who was with me and with us in 1996 when we first filmed Gene, and Kelly Green, who is the production assistant. And I say this humbly, this project would not be happening were it not for Kelly and the contribution that she brings, the support and the technical knowledge. So I say thank you to everybody here. And before we screen this film, which we are calling Gene McCarthy in the Land of the Aardvarks, I would like to read to you from a very early book of poetry, and the last poem in it is The Aardvark. Now, this poem starts with a line that says, "I am alone in the land of the aardvarks." And it ends with a line that says, "I am looking for you." Some of it in between is obscure to me, and I am sorry that I did not have the time to sit with him and to ask what some of these metaphors relate to. But to me, the important part of it is, I am alone in the land of the aardvarks, and I am looking for you. And it says, I am alone in the land of the aardvarks. I am walking west. All the aardvarks are going east. Aardvarks cannot look and listen at the same time. They're listening now, listening to the sound of the marching feet of the termites they're going to eat. The termites are behind me. They are choice termites. They have grown fat on the dead wood of the tree of knowledge. Even if the aardvarks were looking, they could not see me. I am wearing red and green. Their world is empty of red and green and of pink and purple and Roman brown. Roman brown, whoa. Their eyes do not narrow in the light or widen in the dark. They see only gray, both night and day. They push through the red earth. It parts before them, but does not close behind. With their long tongues, they speak a thin language I do not understand. Aardvarks think always of soft food because they have no gizzards. I am looking for you. Thank you.
I shall use no rabble-rousing platitudes to introduce him. Entering even now from the center field bleachers, Eugene McCarthy.
We must be prepared to make this commitment. First, that we believe in the power of reason to give some direction to life and also to history. But in addition to that, when we're uncertain what our judgment should be, to make a mistake on the side of trust rather than on the side of mistrust. Whether we're dealing with our fellow Americans of every race, or whether we're dealing with people in other parts of the world, be prepared to make a mistake on the side of generous judgment and liberality. Make a mistake on the side of hope rather than on the side of fear.
This is no country for the young. The old refuse to die. Shadows dare to stand against the sun, veiled by the ash of Hiroshima. Time is tired of you and me. It now runs out like dust from the broken hourglass.
I've heard the name around, but it didn't really stand out to me until I started becoming involved with McCarthy Center. Senator McCarthy has left a legacy here.
He was all over this campus as a student, and he also came back frequently. He was in the monastery for 7 or 8 months. He spent plenty of time in the quadrangle, but he was also in the baseball field. He was on the hockey rink.
My grandmother was of German ancestry, and sending her boys to St. John's for a solid Benedictine education was a major goal. And so German Benedictine traditions became a very important part of my dad's life.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the 9th Annual Eugene J. McCarthy Lecturer, Senator Chris Dodd.
My father served in both the House and the Senate with Gene McCarthy, and they shared a lot in common, saw themselves as a different generation of Irish-American politicians. My father wasn't a poet like Gene was.
I'd love to tell you this was my idea, but it's from Dr. Martin Luther King. He once said, "Are you a thermometer or are you a thermostat?" And Gene McCarthy had a bit of both. But it's when he decided to become that thermostat, to turn up the heat, that he had such a tremendous influence.
I'm concerned that the administration seems to have set no limit to the price which it's willing to pay for a military victory.
At each stage of Vietnam, our involvement became deeper and deeper, and the general evidence that the people running the war didn't know what they were doing.
Someone had to challenge the Johnson interpretation of the role of the presidency in the field of foreign policy.
Bobby Kennedy was the most likely candidate. He said he wouldn't run, and he said it publicly. He said he had to think of his future.
My decision to challenge the president's position.
We were looking for someone who would run in the ballot box on that issue. Gene came in because nobody else would do it.
I intend to enter the Democratic primaries.
Senator McCarthy said, "Dave, I'd like to come into the New Hampshire primary."
And I said, this man will do very well in New Hampshire because his style is appropriate to New Hampshire.
People began coming in, graduate students and others who just said, "Here I am."
There was really no other choice. I really felt I had to come.
I'm here principally because I want to end the war in Vietnam.
I came in here working for a cause, and I'm finding I'm ending up working for a man.
I found that the students were genuinely concerned. I sensed that most of them really wanted to do something more or less within the system if they were given a chance.
Dad was very unknown in that state. The first aim of the campaigning was just to give him some identification and recognition.
Some of the people might feel a little bit offended that their town is being invaded by college students, but we can turn it right around. We've come all the way out here because we believe so strongly in Senator McCarthy.
This guy started with nothing except the people. They now know that they can make their presence felt.
We had no headquarters. We had $500 in the checking account, and we knew that the burden of the peace movement was on our backs.
They said we were amateurs, but on the ward level, I don't think New Hampshire had ever seen anything that organized.
I've
feeling somewhat better.
It suddenly occurred to me that something is really happening in America and that Lyndon Johnson is not going to be renominated for president. We are going to defeat an incumbent president of the United States.
I think it's regaining something that we've lost in American politics.
New Hampshire, for 50 years and more, it has seen politicians come here for the primary. Now they're here again.
Yeah. I worked for your campaign back in '68. Are you going to run? We need you. You're a good positive figure in the middle of all this.
So the New Hampshire primary right here in 1968 when he ran for president, Eugene McCarthy.
They're interested in seeing a nominee who can beat Bill Clinton.
But there's a second thing we don't have this year. I flew up here
on the same airplane with Gene McCarthy. He needs to be here from 1968.
There was an issue that year.
1968, if you recall, was a very tragic year for this country. But that year began with a lot of hope. And a lot of that hope began with the candidacy of an anti-war senator from the state of Minnesota by the name of Eugene McCarthy.
It was said that this was rather a desperate venture on my part. The first response was to say that this was disloyal to the party.
Well, that's the nature of leadership, isn't it? To know and to get in there early. Got a lot of guts, and you got to give them points for it.
I am announcing today my candidacy for the presidency of the United States.
He had his chance, and I was supporting Gene till the end.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
By his pulling out, he left the issue of the war for whoever came after him.
I shall seek the nomination of the Democratic Party.
I'm glad McCarthy's running, but now with Kennedy butting in, that's going to be bad.
I don't know what effect he's going to have on the overall movement. I hope he won't divide it and destroy it.
Lower class workers did not respond as well to McCarthy's more intellectual approach to politics as they did to Kennedy's more emotional and visceral approach.
I know of nobody who's more thoughtful than Gene.
The press loved Bobby. You were not sufficiently angry in the debate.
One of the things we ought to talk about is the process by which decisions were made.
Philosophers are not great debaters.
He wanted to downplay the personal aspect of himself.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible?
Oh, my God.
Senator Kennedy has been
As Dad said, this year in 1968 is the moment of truth for America. If this effort fails, many people, particularly the young people, will lose whatever faith they have left now.
It could be a wonderful age for our children to grow up in, and it just looks very hopeless.
By this time, Humphrey was bringing the party forces back into play.
There was the Johnson-Humphrey Mayor Daley machine in Chicago. There was no way that he could overcome that.
It was pretty obvious that the Humphrey forces had control of all the mechanisms, but we couldn't surrender. We had to carry this all the way through.
He is our last hope in 1968. That man is Gene McCarthy.
The people who supported me wanted to die in public, and that's what the convention was about. This is where we took our stand and were beaten down.
Take your hands off of it.
You know, you're in this atmosphere of impending violence.
Today, we celebrate and give thanks for the life of our father, a life long lived, a life well lived. After the 1968 campaign, he felt very alienated.
I am alone in the land of the aardvarks. I am walking east. All the aardvarks are going west.
It haunts me to this day that I did not listen carefully enough when he was walking west alone.
He was a complicated man who inspired complicated and often conflicting feelings.
There were times when he disappointed us, but he never betrayed us.
He was inside the system, was at the table of power.
We have politics controlled by two strong factions.
What we have, in effect, has been a mercenary army.
What we ought to be talking about is redistributing work.
To abolish the office of the vice president is probably the first step.
This is truly a new idea.
Yeah,
You're going to run for president?
I'm looking for a write-in tomorrow. I think they were an inevitable consequence of his contemplative nature.
It's fitting that the lecture in his name is titled Conscience and Courage in Public Life.
He has inspired students like me to get involved.
We have to raise the idea of public service in America.
I want to replicate that. I want to mobilize citizens from every generation to not sit back and let politics happen.
I bet you there's a Eugene McCarthy to be in this room.
At the end of my life, I want to feel like I made society better in some way.
All cards have been drawn, all bets called. The dice warm as blood in the hand, shaken for the final cast.
When confronted with times like this, you have to understand enough history to know this is not the first crisis nor the worst one we've ever been in.
Most delegates to this convention do not know that thousands of young people are being beaten in the streets of Chicago.
Broken things are powerful, but things about to break are stronger still.
If you turn on the microphone, I will sing. It's on? This is not. Then I want this one. This one has to come on. All right, we do need lights. Very, very graceful segue, thank you. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Eugene McCarthy and put down your knives and forks, please. Please put down your knives and forks. There is a sacred song being sung, the Eugene McCarthy campaign song. Thank you. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Eugene McCarthy and bring peace to this our land. It robs us of the honor that our country has known before, when we will not pursue a peace to end an unjust war. We are all responsible for what's done in this war. Democracy means we can decide. That's what our vote is for. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Eugene McCarthy and bring peace to this our land. Our cities crumble from a bomb dropped on a foreign land, and politicians stand and watch as the flames of hate are fanned. No one is too young to help, no effort is too small. Everyone must care this time, we all must heed the call. This was the Eugene McCarthy campaign song that I wrote. The words still resonate. They are part of our own time, just as Eugene McCarthy's legacy informs us and inspires us today. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Eugene McCarthy and bring peace to this our land. Now that he's said what's in his heart, alone he took his stand. He's echoed by more timid voices who wish to lead our land. We are all responsible for what's done in this war. Democracy means we can decide. That's what our vote is for. These were the last notes that were sung when you just saw this clip. And I am what's left of Peter Yarrow, Peter, Paul, and Marion. But I am not in any way diminished by the years. In fact, the opposite is true, because I am still invigorated, enlightened, committed to what brought us together in 1968. If you can sing the words, but I think it's better if you just speak it. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Eugene McCarthy and bring peace to this our land. Let's say it together to honor Gene on his 100th birthday. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Eugene McCarthy. Vote for Eugene McCarthy and bring peace to this our land. Now do it with more energy. If you get confused, watch my lips. Here we go. If you love your country, if you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Gene. Vote for Gene McCarthy and bring peace to this. And now you can sing it one more time. If you love your country and the things for which it stands, vote for Gene McCarthy and bring peace to this our land. I need somebody up here to help me with this. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Uncle Gene. Happy birthday to you. Right on mic, you should lead it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I'll sing some other songs later, but that does it for now.
Good evening, everyone. Don't stop eating. Keep eating. That's okay. I'm Garrison McMurtry. I'm the outreach director with Senator Amy Klobuchar's office. Very happy to be here and happy that Matt invited us to be a part of this event. Unfortunately, the senator can't be here, but I'm here on her behalf to read a letter that she wanted to send. And as I read, you keep eating. Dear friends, thank you for the kind invitation to join you for today's celebration of a true Minnesota statesman, Eugene McCarthy. Although my schedule prevents me from being with you in person, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Eugene McCarthy Center for Public Policy and Civic Engagement for inviting me to be a part of this 100th birthday celebration of a man who truly transformed American politics. McCarthy was a fighter on behalf of the people of this state and country. No matter how difficult a decision He was always determined to do what was right for the people he represented. Whether it was in the halls of Congress, on the presidential campaign trail, or writing one of his many poems and books, Eugene stayed true to himself and what he believed. I know that his legacy continues through the work that so many students are accomplishing here at the Center of Public Policy and Civic Engagement. Again, I thank you to the organizers of this event and the McCarthy family for this invitation. As we celebrate the 100th birthday of this Minnesota public servant, let us also continue to tell his story and embody his spirit of giving back to our communities. I'm honored to have followed in his footsteps and to serve Minnesota in the United States Senate. Sincerely, Amy Klobuchar, United States Senator. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Just to keep things moving, I'm next. Please continue eating. Yeah, you don't have to stop. My name is Edwin Torres. I am a senior political science major from San Pedro, California. Throughout today's beautiful events, we have celebrated the life and legacy of Eugene, spanning 100 years as a teacher, politician, scholar, poet, athlete, and writer. In December 2005, we lost Gene. But to this day, we continue his legacy. In 2006, the Eugene J. McCarthy Center for Public Policy and Civic Engagement was created as a learning community for students, faculty, staff, and alums who are interested in being engaged in issues and practices of public policy. For almost 10 years, the McCarthy Center has engaged thousands of students and created hundreds of events that has become the dominant public policy and civic engagement center at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. That's how we have continued the legacy of Eugene McCarthy here at home, by engaging and developing future leaders. But instead of me describing the McCarthy Center, why don't we just see it? Honestly, come and visit us. At this time, I would like to talk about the poetry contest. Eugene McCarthy's legacy as a public figure is rich and complex, grounded in the values and ideals of Christian tradition and a deep understanding of American history. It spans politics, philosophy, and poetry. Poetry was the first thing that stood out to me as I was planning today's events. For that reason, we had a poetry contest and invited students to submit their best poems on peace and courage. A committee of English professors and poets reviewed the poems and selected Adrian Demerit as the winner. Adrian is a senior majoring in chemistry from Nassau, Bahamas. Please help me welcome Adrian Demerit, who will share his poem today.
Good evening. First and foremost, please excuse my nervousness. I did not expect this many people to be here. I know that now, thank you. So, I really didn't find out that Eugene McCarthy was such a huge poet until recently, and I really hope my piece does him justice. Before I start, there's just a small disclaimer, and it itself is a small poem, if you will. It reads thus: we are in desperate need for a colorblind world, one where blacks won't sing blues and men won't crave the red of bloodshed to push them for the newspaper title "Man Found Dead." The concept of the crayon box has left whites to hate yellows and loathe the existence of anything darker than tan, and the only time we get any peace is when a rainbow of pulchritude is created from the purples, pinks, and orange of flowers. But why confine peace to a season? Why define attributes by color? Why place the color wheel on a pedestal? The following original piece is entitled Crayon Box Warfare, and I sincerely hope that you enjoy. Crayon Box Warfare. Hi. Hi. And you. Yes, you. Way over there, sir. Hi. Welcome to our, well, how should I put this? Bring your parent to school day. And first up, we have Peace's dad, Unity. Let's give him a round of applause, shall we? Hi, everyone. Hi. My name's Unity, and you know, I'm the concept of taking two things that aren't so awesome and mashing them together and making something that's totally awesome. Yeah, that's me. But anyway, let's talk about what I do. Imagine, if you will, the world and the society that we live in as a canvas on which you could draw, color, or paint. And the picture is pretty much, it's exactly what you would think. See, first I start by drawing a globe, and then I draw the people. See, I put all the blue people in a blue box, and I put all the red people in a red box, and then I put all the yellow people in a yellow box, and then it's perfect. Everything is perfect because it's the perfect family, and... What? Do they ever touch? Green. Green, what's green? No. See, you don't understand. See, first I put all the blue people in a blue box, and I put all the red people in a red box, and if the blue people ever need help, then that's when the red... Okay, see, I got you now. This is where the yellow people just... No one ever really helps anyone, do they? I mean, I call myself Unity, but I've been running from myself, and now I'm harder to find. I didn't even have to call Waldo to find the best places to hide because my true self sat in darkness while the conformity shined. It's like I'm stuck in a vine looping a day at a time. I find it strange that I scream for a perfect world, you know, change, but it's always in vain. Lean on me when you're not strong. No, Dad, no, put pen to paper, that's the start. And then you move gracefully, that's how you make art. And I'll be your friend, I'll help you carry on. Make the crayon box theory completely unprovable. Please take this broken society we have and you just make it beautiful. Ooh, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean. Do you understand now, Dad? Well, you know, I think I kind of do. Then you tell them. In this broken society tainted with apathy, we preach to the masses daily sermons on reality when, in reality, I can't even dream about this family because of the happiness you see in peace. I count a million fallacies. But then the ignorant will tell me, what's wrong? Just stay calm. Society is fine. That's your daughter, man. What could possibly be wrong? What's wrong? You explain to me why we're never scared to drop nukes or napalms until someone mentions a casualty like Mike Brown or Trayvon. See, that's what's wrong. We don't care about each other. And you ask me, what's that supposed to mean? We just walk over broken crayons, cross our shoulders, and pray that God intervenes. But it's not some deity's job to cure ignorance with powers unseen. We have to fix the society we made, not pray for problem-fixing machines. See, this war, it's so stupid. I don't understand the reason why. Hues fight with hues. I swear there's nothing left to believe in if cultures, crayons are broken for generations, and if the box that's supposed to keep us together only promotes more segregation. Could you imagine what would happen if we obliterated the canvas? No more wars, no more bloodshed. Do you even understand it? If we burn the crayon box, then the whole world will go with it. One people, one culture, then we'll finally be united. But see, everyone's so scared, like, no, 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 it can't be me. I'd like to forget the canvas and finally feel the picture, feel the family, but that would be treason and I can't go against society. So until someone finally steps up, segregation's just the way it has to be. No. You could lean on me. You could lean on every single one of you. You'll be the revolution's crucibles. You'll make the black crayon on white canvas, white crayon on black canvas, any theory completely provable. And for you color commanders who deem my words tonight unsuitable, I'm sorry. My name's Unity. I was just doing my job, trying to take ugly things and make them beautiful. Word.
Well, that was pretty special, and the specialness continues, folks. A couple more speakers, and then we'll hear Peter Yarrow play a bit more. Next up, President Emeritus, Father Hilary Timish. Please help me welcome Father Hilary.
A hard act to follow. I think the first time I associated Eugene McCarthy with poetry was the summer of 1968, when he spent a few days at St. John's to take a break from campaigning and did a poetry reading one evening at the invitation of Father Coleman Berry, who was the president of St. John's at that time. I heard him that night, but I didn't really get to know him until I was president in the 80s. Sometimes when he was on campus overnight, I had the chance to invite him to my office for a relaxed conversation and a drink with a few other guests. That was how I got to see a side of Eugene McCarthy that I probably wouldn't have known otherwise. What did we talk about? I'm sure we spent some time getting Gene's slant on current affairs. Those were the Reagan years. And I remember Gene's wry comment that you can't really soak the rich. You might get them a little damp. I would bring him up to date on St. John's, particularly in the monastery, where he still knew some members of the community from his college years and his brief experience as a Benedictine novice. But oddly enough, what always comes back to me when I think of those evenings is Gene reciting the poetry of William Butler Yeats, sometimes at considerable length. A few years ago, Bill Holm wrote a piece on Eugene McCarthy, last of the poet politicians. He noted that Gene knew much of Yeats' poetry by heart. I think that Yeats and McCarthy probably shared a certain seriousness about life. I've tried to recall which poems I heard Gene recite, but I may be confusing my favorites with his. For instance, there is Yeats' comment on writing poetry in a poem called Adam's Curse. I said, a line will take us hours, maybe, yet if it doesn't seem a moment's thought, our stitching and unstitching has been naught. Or maybe a poem on a distinctively Irish subject. The men who died in the Easter Rebellion of 1916, the year that Gene was born, as Mary Beth just mentioned. We know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. McDonough and McBride and Connolly and Peirce. Now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, they are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. I'd love to go on quoting Yeats, but I want to add just another word about Gene. In later years, I saw him every so often in Washington and Virginia, thanks mostly to Al Isley. By then, Gene was publishing his own poetry. Let me close with his Lament of an Aging Politician, which is a kind of self-assessment. Quote, "Stubbornness and penicillin hold the aged above me. My metaphors grow cold and old. My enemies, both young and bold. I have left Act 1 for involution and Act 2. There, mired in complexity, I cannot write Act 3. Well, quite the contrary. Using his own metaphor, I would suggest that he wrote Act 3 of his life with the same distinction as Acts 1 and 2. To the end, you can't imagine him talking in slogans or platitudes. He was certainly one of the most distinguished public figures of his time. I'm happy to think that St. John's can take a little credit for the way he turned out.
That was fabulous, Father Hillary. All right, next up, I'd like to invite my good friend David Turch, who's a very good friend of St. John's and St. Ben's, and in particular the Washington, D.C. Summer Study Program, for which I have had the privilege of directing last number of years. David, thank you very much for joining us today.
Matt, it is absolutely the least I can do, and for those of you who know me, I strive to do the least I can do. If you will look on your program, this event closes at 8 o'clock, so apparently my time has expired. Do we?
We've extended your time.
Thank you very much. That sounded like what we would say in Washington is time for a filibuster. It's so good to be home and to be here. This is, in fact, the room at which I was first introduced to St. John's and so many of my good friends that are here tonight. It was the introductory reception to those of us who were freshmen, and I remember sitting against the far wall for that painting that isn't all that good, but it's interesting. I learned a whole number of things from the senator on whose staff I was privileged to serve. It's funny that we listened to a letter from Amy Klobuchar, who occupies that office. There is some succession to the Senate, and we preserve the same telephone numbers. And from memory, it's like 32334 or 3244. I'll have to look it up, but I'll bet the end of the number is 224-3244. So in any event, it's good. You mentioned Al Isley. Al, a good friend of Senator McCarthy, taught me one of the great lessons of my life. It was in the basement of a bar. It's now the 201. Al was a pup for the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Wasn't that the name of the newspaper? And I was quoting something in a political campaign to be off the record. And he just said, I won't listen to anything that's off the record. And I thought it was one of the values of the senator. That is, you were responsible and you needed to stand behind not only your thoughts, but the things that you were going to say publicly. Second, I wouldn't have been in Washington without my good friend Dick Verdon. He's out here somewhere. I can tell you Dick had a distinguished career in the U.S. State Department, and then he returned to St. John's to be a professor. I was pleased to talk with him earlier this evening, and I was certain he did it for the money. Then he said he was an adjunct professor. I joined the senator's staff in 1967. I wrote a 2-sentence letter of application, one of which was that I needed the job. They didn't interview me. They just said, at least I'd learned how to write. We remember so many things about the senator, and what I remember, and I want to caution you now that I have an excellent memory. It just doesn't last very long, so I'm not entirely sure about the historic accuracy to this. But I remember a few things. And one is, Ellen, I remember when Secret Service protection was first provided on Woodley Road, it was like an armed fort. I can only imagine what goes on today. And it's one of the things that still burns in my mind of how well fortified that delightful house was. Second, I remember the senator coming back, and from recollection, it was in the evening, because we tend to focus on the senator's involvement with the anti-war years in the Vietnam War, coming back from the Senate gym, in which only senators were allowed. And they were having a conference about who it was that was going to take on the President of the United States at that time, because it really needed to be done as a democratic movement. Everyone assumed it was going to be Bobby Kennedy. When the senator came up, he said, there are no conditions under which Bobby Kennedy indicated he would run for the presidency this time around, and I'm the candidate. Turned out that wasn't exactly the case. The second thing I remember is after the assassination of Senator Kennedy, McCarthy was in the office with a few of us, and I remember the emotional toll that the train ride took on him on the way back, and it was visible. You didn't come here to listen to me pontificate for a long time, and I'm sorry about that, because I actually had prepared 41 minutes of scintillating and interesting comments. But I want to leave you with another lesson that I learned directly from the senator. And I don't recall exactly the circumstances, but for some reason I got involved with the Department of Agriculture, and I had some dispute with someone who was a high level. I don't remember if it was the secretary or an assistant secretary, but the senator himself brought the letter back to the desk and just laid it down and said, Turch, you want to play congressman? Get elected. For the rest of my life, I never forgot the difference between the Tom Emmers of the world, who stand up with all the scrutiny, asking for your vote and your support to represent you, and people like me who just serve as your advocates. So thank you for listening.
All right. Next up, Sylvia and Sam Kaplan. Now, our good friends of the center, we had them up to St. John's earlier this year. Sam, former United States ambassador to Morocco. Sylvia, his partner all the time, and we call them both up, say a few words about the campaign, about McCarthy, and anything else they would like to say.
Good evening. The first time I did anything in a political campaign was delivering leaflets for Eugene McCarthy in his first run for the House of Representatives. That was a long time ago. Sylvia wants to talk about how it was in 1968. Permit me to talk about something else, and that is when you've been away for 3.5 years, you get a different view of America and how it is viewed abroad. And on the 4th of July, you stand at the embassy, and there are thousands of people who've been invited for our National Day, and then you have an opportunity to speak to them. And I always spoke to them about my joy of January 20th every 4 years, when there was a peaceful transition from one administration to another. That was very telling, I thought. And then we had a delegation come to the embassy who were Moroccans who had been in the United States, and more specifically had been in Minnesota on a Fulbright program. And they talked about Eugene McCarthy. Why did they talk about Eugene McCarthy? Because of the extraordinary quality of what he did. Morocco is one of the best countries in that part of the world. It's one of the most stable, but it has a ruler who will not be replaced by popular choice and will not be challenged by the people of Morocco. To these people, interestingly enough, in animal husbandry and veterinary medicine, they were part of the Fulbright group to Minnesota. They were fascinated by Eugene McCarthy, who challenged a sitting president of the United States, who had actually been elected by this extraordinary margin against Goldwater, and he had the nerve to do it. Whether you liked his campaign, whether you didn't like his campaign, whether you preferred Humphrey or somebody else, this audacious act by those people who study American affairs abroad is a very meaningful thing. And for the older people who still remember it, it's something to make us proud of.
And while we were in Morocco, I had the opportunity particularly to speak to students and to young women, to women's groups. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was very committed to anywhere she went around the world to energize and empower youth and particularly women. And so I would tell them my story. I was very young and very angry about what was going on with civil rights first and later on with the war in Vietnam. And every night I went to meetings and every night I organized, and I had no training and no money and no powerful friends. That was before I married Sam. But then I read a book called Crisis in Black and White by a man named Charles Silberman, which was about political organizing, and that changed my life. And after I spent all kinds of time calling people and getting people together for meetings and meeting with church groups, and it turned out that the Catholic Church, every time we had a great priest, they would move him away, who was leading the civil rights movement, but never mind about that. But anyway, then I decided that the way to change the world was to get involved in politics, and I hadn't gotten involved in politics before. And so in 1967 and 68, we had what then in Golden Valley where I lived, we had ward clubs, and Leo Hurwitz, I don't know if any of you have heard of Leo, but he was a Nobel Prize winning economist, and he was my mentor in politics and an extraordinary person. And then we had another guy named Karl Auerbach, who was a professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. And so Karl Auerbach represented the Johnson forces and the war, and Leo represented peace and what became the McCarthy people, and I became one of those people, and somehow or other I got elected, even though I was the youngest member of the group, to be a McCarthy delegate at the state convention that year. And it was personally transforming for me, but it was also for so many people. And now when I think about it, you know, and I had no experience in politics at that time, and I didn't even know exactly what happened at state conventions. And some of the women who later became leaders of the feminist movement in Minnesota and other people who are now my friends, like Jerry Joseph, who was then a state senator, the ambassador to the Netherlands, was of course, a Humphrey person. And in 1968, it all seemed so clear. There were the good people and the bad people, and it probably seems like that to a lot of young people now, and it's I think, more complicated. But I never met Senator McCarthy. I don't think he came to the convention. Maybe they didn't let him come to the convention. I don't know if anybody else was here. Were you at the convention? Do you know what happened? He wasn't there. But anyway, never met him, but he changed my life, and being a McCarthy delegate was so inspiring, and I have continued over the years to stay committed to politics even when it gets ugly and mean, because, you know, there are people like him, and later we had Paul Wellstone, and now we have, you know, Senator Klobuchar, and we have all kinds of course, Al Franken, and all kinds of other people. So, but all kinds of people. But Minnesota has an extraordinary congressional delegation, and I'm very proud to continue to be involved in politics, and I think so many people are getting negative and getting discouraged, and it started with McCarthy, and we continue to be so pleased to be here.
I just want to say that I'm so impressed with the people who are making movies and other things about Gene McCarthy to cover his entire lifetime. And that's so critically important. But the reality is that there was a year in time, 67 and 68, which altered the course of American history forevermore, all because of Gene. That was really impressive.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Kaplans, for making the trip up. And as Mr. Al Isley, biographer of Senator McCarthy, makes his way up here, I want to give a quick shout out to Rob Hahn. Rob, there you are. Rob is also a filmmaker who recently completed a 30-minute film, and hopefully soon to be a longer film, about the 1968 campaign, which we will be showing Rob's film along with Mary Beth's film tomorrow during the lunch hour in this room. So if any of you are staying over, or you want to come back, or what have you, I highly encourage you. And the Kaplans, in fact, are interviewed in that film along with many other people that you will recognize. So thanks, Rob, for being here, and thanks for the film. Mr. Albert Isley, another good friend of the McCarthy Center since day one, great friend of the DC Summer Study Program, just an all-around great guy. Al?
And class of 58. 58, that's right. Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here, and congratulations to Matt and all of the McCarthy Center staff. I was privileged to cover Eugene McCarthy as a reporter from St. Paul, and later I knew him well and spent time with him. And I was at his apartment when Peter Yarrow serenaded him about a month before his death. And I was privileged to know McCarthy a long time. I was asked if I would start with a few jokes, and I said, no, I think I'll just talk about the 2016 presidential campaign. I tried to get McCarthy a Medal of Freedom from the White House, and he was, with the help of Senator Daschle and Dennis McDonough, but we didn't succeed. Apparently, Obama had more concerns about Cuba than he did McCarthy. Anyway, there were 2 mentions of Gene McCarthy in the Washington Post today. So one was about the death of the widow of Congressman John Blatnick, the senior member of the Minnesota delegation, first DFL member elected to Congress. And the second was a party at the White House with Kitty Kelly, who was identified as a former aide to Gene McCarthy. The record, the St. John's Record, last week, made a mention of McCarthy, and it said, "Do not confuse, not to be mistaken for Joe McCarthy." Unfortunately, with the Wisconsin primary, when Donald Trump refused to acknowledge the support of, or refused to accept the support of Joe McCarthy, it was a new McCarthyism was started again, and I think it's time for us to put that to rest. In January 2006, memorial service at the National Cathedral, I followed President Clinton and spoke at it, but he said, it all began with Gene McCarthy's willingness to stand alone and turn the tide of history. And I don't think there's anything more that I can say about Gene McCarthy. You can read about it, what I wrote in the various, it's in the program. One final note, and coming out here today from Washington, I was sitting next to Colonel David Oshier, who is director of the U.S. Army Wounded Warriors Program. He was on his way to Salt Lake City, and he had great memories of Gene McCarthy, and we shared them. So thank you very much for all coming.
Al, that was the shortest speech I think I've ever heard you give. Now, I wasn't going to start clapping, but apparently your classmate Taylor, no. Well, listen, thank you all again for being here. We're going to conclude with a couple more songs from Peter Yarrow and, yeah, wrap this up. So, Peter, great to have you here.
I'm with you.
All right.
I'm with you. Thank you for the privilege of joining you, my friends, once more. I want to sing a song that recalls the moments in Grant Park in Chicago, because they're burned in my memory. Eugene McCarthy was indeed at the convention in terms of trying to speak, but he was not allowed to speak, and his supporters were ejected. And I was there with Mary Beth. I was in love, and I was in love with life and possibility, and my heart was breaking. And at a certain point, I looked down because of these, in Grant Park there were hundreds and hundreds, now very famous protesters, with little speakers on their heads that were battery powered. They were saying, "Delegates, if you are with us, flash your lights," because there was the big side of the Hilton Hotel. And at first nothing happened, and then a big cheer went up from way below, and I was looking out the window with Mary Beth, and there it was clear that the windows were flashing, you know, the light up and down, they were flashing. The lights were being turned on and off. And I had come there to support Gene in a three-piece suit, along with Noel Paul Stuckey, Mary Travers. No longer able to support Gene, our intention was to try to put a peace plank in the platform, unsuccessfully. as great a statesperson as Hubert Humphrey was, he was under the thumb of President Johnson at the time, and it was tragic what occurred in his life at that moment. Well, I was there to support Gene, but I could not resist the call to go downstairs. And I went downstairs, and from up above you could see the gas attacks. So I put a napkin tied around my neck, and which was wet with water. So if the tear gas was coming towards me, I'd be able to handle it, because that would give me a bit of protection. And I looked around, and there was Mary, who had made the same decision at that same moment. And the crowd saw us, and at the time, you have to remember that we had a huge hit called Leaving on a Jet Plane at the time. We were extremely, it was a #1 hit. And so we got up to the microphone, and standing in front of us were the National Guard with their guns, no longer at ease, but pointing. And the Chicago police were there, and there was George Umich, who was on the 15th floor, Gene McCarthy headquarters, and the police had come up there, and they'd beaten the campaign workers. Now it wasn't a matter of exclusion, it was a matter of direct attack. And there was George Umich, a seminarian, with his head split. And you can imagine how devastating and frightening this was. And there I was at the microphone, and so what did we do? You know, because we sang. And I have to recall a bit of this and give you a little bit of the songs that we sang. And first of all, those kids in those uniforms all grew up with Puff the Magic Dragon. They were not going to shoot at Puff's daddy. And I knew that. So I sang, Puff the Magic Dragon lived right in the midst of that craziness. Can you imagine? Picture this. Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the... And you saw the rifles go down. And you sensed the painful absurdity of the moment, of the difference between a state of conflict. And believe me, there was Kent State, there were precedents for unspeakable things that had occurred. And there they were, some of them unable to prevent themselves from singing along. So let's commemorate that moment. Puff the Magic Dragon lived by the sea and frolicked in the autumn mist in a land called Honolulu. Little Jackie Paper loved that rascal Puff. In any event, the guns went down, and people started speaking again, but then the tension started rising and came at us, and it's on film, a flying wedge of police or National Guardsmen. And the batons waving around and beating. So we had to sing. Give him the microphone. When he sang before, it cooled everything out. So there I was. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. And through the night, it kept going like that. And then in the morning, Gene appeared. There's a picture of Mary, me, Mary Beth, and Gene, and he spoke, and that was the only time he addressed the people there. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of a sense of that history, because although people can read the facts, the reality was this dream, this precious dream that we had come from the grassroots, began to create itself amongst real people in the civil rights movement, and then that segued right into the peace movement, the anti-Vietnamese war movement. And what we were witnessing was a moment of despair, because the possibility of taking it from the streets into the halls of power was being obliterated. And as I was talking to Mary Beth on camera today and thinking about it, I wanted to share a particular perspective with you. This movement seemed at that point to be obliterated, but it has not at all died. And I don't just mean in my heart. I mean something, as has been said very eloquently in front of this microphone, something was created that is deeply embedded into the American spirit. A sense of empowerment, a sense of hope, a sense of determination, a legacy of something that says we can do it. And what is it? The it I'm talking about was the it that was referred to by Gene in Wilmer, Minnesota, when we were sitting by Eagle Lake, where his brother, Austin, and Muriel McCarthy had a wonderful summer home, where our children, grandchildren of Austin and Mac were growing up in the summers. And Gene and I were sitting there, and one of the young people that worked with me in the McCarthy campaign was out there water skiing. And we looked at him, and we looked around, and Gene just leaned over and he said, "We almost did it. We almost did it." What did we almost do that we can still do? We almost changed the ethos, the focus, and the forward motion of our country and the world, because it resonated throughout the world, the audacity of Gene's leadership led us to a place where it wasn't just a matter of stopping a war, but creating an ethical society where the boxes of yellow and all other colors would no longer be separate, whether it was color of skin or color of spirit. We are not done. We never stopped. Whether you know it or not, it's in you. It will continue, and it continues in a powerful, moving way. In this, well, I love the bricks in this building. I love them. They are so emblematic of the handcrafted reality of what it was that helped to shape Eugene McCarthy's ethos and spirit. It lives on. And today, to sing with you, I want to sing one song that I sang at Gene's memorial with my daughter, who was a singer, Gene's grandniece, who was born, had the good sense to be born on his birthday. And it's sung for all of you, but particularly it's sung for those of you who have not faltered, who have not become cynical, who have not become jaded or disaffected or weary. And it's called Sweet Survivor. And I was honored to sing it at his memorial at the National Cathedral, and I sing it once more now. And then we'll end with a very up moment, okay? So, because I wouldn't like you to have to leave this portion of the presentation without an affirmation. But this is, in its own way, a strong affirmation. You have asked me why the days fly by so quickly, and why each one feels no different from the last. And you say that you are fearful for the future, and you have grown suspicious of the past, and you wonder if the dreams we shared together have abandoned us, or we abandoned them. And you cast about and try to find new meaning, so that you can feel that closeness once again. Carry on, my sweet survivor. Carry on, my lonely friend. Don't give up your dream. Don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor. Though you know that something's gone, for everything that matters, carry on. You remember when we felt that each person mattered, and that each one had to care, or all was lost. But now you see believers turn to cynics, and you wonder, was the struggle worth the cost? And then you see someone too young to know the difference, and the veil of isolation in their eyes. And inside you know you got to leave them something, or the hope for something better slowly dies. So carry on, my sweet survivor. Carry on, my lonely friend. Don't you give up your dream, and don't you let it end. Carry on, my sweet survivor. You've carried it so long, so it may come again. Carry on, carry on. I know that it shall come again. It must come again, so we'll carry on. Dear Eugene McCarthy, with you in our hearts, we'll carry on. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, a hammer in the evening, all over this land. I hammer out danger, I'd hammer out a warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land, 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 land. If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. I'd sing out danger, I'd sing it out a warning, I'd sing it out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land, 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 land. Well, I've got a hammer and I've got a bell and I've got a song to sing all over this land. It's a hammer of justice, it's a bell of freedom, song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land, land, land. Hammer of justice, bell of freedom, song about the love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
Well, as Gene would say, carry on, have a good evening, and thank you very much.